Hey, I'm Chris. I've taught SolidWorks to hundreds of design students over the past 15 years, and every single one started here with sketching. If you want to build confidence, this is the place. In this video, we're building on the basics. I'll walk you through sketching circles, arcs, and ellipses. You'll also learn how and why to use construction lines, and we'll take a look at what's actually happening when you jump in and out of edit sketch mode. Let's get started. These lessons you're about to see are taken from my full SolidWorks for Designers course on Udemy, where I go deeper into the tools and provide project files to follow along. If you want to learn faster with additional content, practice files, and support, check out the full Udemy course linked below. Now let's talk about circle sketches. Now on our toolbar here, once again, circle has a drop-down menu and it has the circle tool and perimeter circle. Perimeter circle is a tool in 20 years of SolidWorks that I've never used. So let's use the circle tool. I'm going to click a circle, and how sketching a circle works is you click, and that is your center point of your circle. You drag your mouse out, you click again, and that is the outer diameter of your circle, or outer radius. So what you're doing is, when you move from center to the outer, you can see that little dotted line that's with my circle. That's actually the radius, okay? The radius being half the circle, the diameter being the full circle. Typically with a circle, you would use the center point to line up with some of the detail, okay? So if I wanted to do a circle on, like, let's say the end of this line here, I can start the circle from that point and then drag it out, okay? You can also obviously draw circles on circles. What's interesting about circles is you can see with this one selected, or when I roll over with my mouse, so when I do a roll over with the mouse without clicking, you can see the circle highlights 4 points: top, side, bottom, north, east, southwest. There's not actually a physical point on the circle. It's just an area that you can create, or you can start a new sketch or relation from, and that will relate to the midpoint of the circle. To clarify, let me try a line tool, and when I click from this point here and draw a horizontal line, it's added a coincident relation to the center point of the circle, and it's made the starting point of that line horizontal to the center point. Again, this is to do with the relations. We'll talk more about that soon. So you can draw lines off a circle like such, or you can also draw a line from the middle point of the circle. So the circle, very easy tool, but very flexible when you combine that with trim tools. We'll explain about that shortly. Let's look at the arc tool here. So 3-point arc, center point arc, and tangent arc. So there are 3 types of arcs. We'll start with the center point arc. How that works is you click for your center point, you drag out, you can see the dotted line, you click again, and then the arc that you draw, you can either go, let's say, left or right here. It's going to draw an arc in that direction. All right. This is just a segment of a circle, okay, without having to split it. So just like we can do with rectangles, creating them from nothing, we can also create an arc from a circle. If I had this circle here, and I split some sections off, and then I trim that away, I've got 2 arcs now. Right? As we said at the very start, there's always multiple ways of doing the same thing. So that is a center point arc. I'll draw another one, center, click out, drag. Now with the center point arc, depending on the way you move your cursor, you might get the shorter point of the arc or the longer point that goes all the way around. So it depends on where you click and then where you move your cursor. Now, if you want to change it, just move your cursor around enough and you should be able to get the shape that you want. Now, if you go all the way back around to the start, it's never going to create a full circle. That's not the tool that you're using. However, if you click, okay, you've created that arc, then you click these endpoints and you move them close enough to each other, it's going to turn into a circle. And it also removes that point between them. Interesting to note. You can go back the other way. So that's a center point. A tangent arc. For a tangent arc, I'm going to reference a line. So I'm going to just draw a line here and a line here. So a tangent arc, how that works is you will collect. For a tangent arc, you must select an endpoint of a sketch segment to be tangent to. Now, it can be a straight line or it can be a curved line or something else, but it must be on an endpoint. So here we've got an endpoint. Now, when I move my cursor out, depending on which direction I move it, it's going to either tangent up or down. See what happens. I'm going to go down, and you can see that arc. And if I drop it, that has made that section there an arc, but it's tangent with this line, which means it's got a smooth join. Okay. Let's try that again. This time we'll go from this endpoint, and I'm going to drag to the right, and it's going to curve and be tangent in that direction. Now, if I want to swap the direction, before I click to confirm the tangent arc, I want to move the cursor back to that point, and then I can move down the other direction. Okay, actually with a tangent arc, you can just swap between it like this. Now let's see if I can get all the way over to this line. Now, when I end the tangent arc on this point, it is not tangent automatically. To make this tangent, I have to select that point, hit make tangent for that to become smooth. Okay, that's a tangent arc. And then the last one is a 3-point arc. A 3-point arc is where you're creating one of the arcs like we've seen before, but you're not referencing a center point at all. So you're just doing it on the outside of the circle. So it's the two outside points and then the one that's in the middle of those. So let's look at this shape here, and I'm going to draw a point here, and then drag out the middle. So basically I've set the distance between the two extremities of that 3-point arc, and then the further I drag, the larger the radius and diameter is going to be. Now, if I drag it too far, if I zoom out at the same time, it's almost just creating a circle, isn't it? If I drag all the way in and I actually go to the other side, it's going to create a circle in the other direction. Okay, those are the arc tools. The last type of sketch tool that needs to be covered for the CSWA exam, as far as shapes, is the ellipse. Now, the ellipse is different to the circles and arcs that we've just done. And under the drop-down menu, there are different types of ellipses: partial, parabola, and conic. Those special ellipse types, you might use those sometimes when you're doing some surfacing work, creating profiles for a loft. Things like that, things of that sort of organic nature. Whereas I use ellipses a lot more. Try to think of an example where I use an ellipse over a circle. Usually it's if I'm trying to create a circle, but it's at a different angle. So something needs to pass through at a certain point. Or it's a very specific type of geometry like a bathtub or something like that. Anyway, let's try the ellipse. With the ellipse, it starts with the center point. So your first click is the center point of the ellipse, and then you can drag any direction. And you'll get a line. Now that line can be at an angle or it can be horizontal or vertical. When I click again, okay, it's created, let's say from the center point to that point. That's like, it's not a radius of an ellipse, but it's halfway. As I drag down, it's changing the shape of that ellipse even more. And I can click again, and now it's created that ellipse. And the difference between an ellipse and a circle is that the circle, while it would show sometimes those points here that I can click on, the ellipse actually has a specific point. Okay, now those points cannot be selected and deleted or removed, but they can be clicked on and then dragged around so that you can rotate your ellipse. You can do things like start a line from one of those points as well. Okay. The last thing to show is construction and center lines. Now, a construction line or a center line, it's kind of the same thing, but they might get described in different ways depending on the specific circumstance you're using them. So let's say, for instance, we have a rectangle here. If I was to draw a line from the top and draw that down to the bottom, and I selected this line and pressed here for construction, it becomes a dotted line, and that is essentially a center line of that object. As I move the size of this part, that line's going to stay in the middle, and it's going to do that because it has a midpoint relation up the top here. Now, under the line tool, there is also a center line tool. Now, if I click center line, and let's try and do the same, but from the side this time, as I draw that line, and then press escape to cancel, you can see the line type is ever so slightly different. this is a line which has been made for construction. And this is also a line made for construction, but they just have a very different pattern. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know why. As I said, I've never used, I can't remember using this centerline tool. Anytime that I've needed to create some sort of center line or construction line, I would simply create a normal line and turn it to for construction. Now, what for construction means is that, let's say this was my geometry that I was creating, this circle, but I wanted to have something which showed me where the top half of the circle was, but I didn't want that to impact the shape that I was creating. Well, I can draw a line here that goes through the middle, and I can select that line and make it for construction, and then that will not impact my geometry. Sometimes for certain tools, you need to have a construction line. I'll take that back. Now, anything can become a construction line. So circles can become for construction. Okay, I select the circle and I press for construction. Or I select like an ellipse and I have the little shortcut button here, construction geometry, converts it from a normal line to construction. Here, I'm just going to flash and talk through it, but this is a master sketch from a product design. And you can see as I'm completing this master sketch, I'm creating a lot of geometry and a lot of different lines, and not all of those lines are actually used for my shapes, my 3D features. Some of those lines are construction lines, and those are purely for reference. Okay, it might be I'm referencing a certain angle or a certain distance, and those lines, maybe I don't want them to be as prominent as other lines. Okay, so there's a number of different ways you can use construction lines. The main thing to remember is that you can just always turn them on and off. So anything that I've created here, like let's say this ellipse, if I want to turn it back and use it again, I can just turn it back into a normal line, and that was fine to go. Right, so now you've created all these sketches. The last task that I want you to do here in this little sketching fundamentals element is I want you to practice selecting these. So drawing the boxes and hitting delete and just understanding how that selection tool works. And I would like you to get to the point where you have deleted everything, which you can do with a very quick one box from the bottom right. Here is your first practice task that we're going to save. We're going to create a sketch for a part that we're going to use in an assembly later on in the project. I want you to follow what I do on screen, and I'll do it slowly, and I'll talk about the shapes as we go. Very first thing, we're going to create two construction lines. So hit the line tool, start on the origin, and draw straight up. I want you to double click, and I want you to create another construction line that goes straight out to the side. So these two lines are solid lines, but we're going to select them and change them to for construction. And then we're going to draw a shape. And this shape, we're going to use some of those basic tools that we've just learned. So we're going to do a line, and we're going to start it not on the origin, but a bit above. I'm going to draw out to the side like this, then up, and then in. But when we go back in, I don't want you to draw it horizontal. I want you to lift it up a little bit so it's got a bit of an angle to it. Then we do another one that's straight up, and then I want you to double click. I'm going to do a new line segment up in the top like this, and double click. Okay, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 line segments. The next thing we're going to do is press escape. I want you to grab the end point of this construction line and drag it higher. And then I want you to draw a circle. So I'm going to grab the circle tool. And the main thing I want you to do is make sure the circle is somewhere along this line. It can be right on the end point, or it can be a bit lower. So you're going to click the circle, and you're going to draw it out, and you're going to drop it on this end point here. And then you're going to draw another circle using the same starting point. Bring it to this point here. Then we're going to press escape, and then you're going to drag this line up till it's touching. And that is the end of this little task. We're going to use it again later. But the last thing to show is how to save your sketch. I'm going to press here, this button. So not the cross, but the other one. And that's going to accept my sketch. All right. Which means then in my feature tree, I can see sketch 1. Or if you've done multiple sketches, it'll have sketch whatever number. Once you have a sketch there, the sketch on your screen turns gray. That means you're no longer editing that sketch. And you can save your file. I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to go File, Save As, and I want you to name this P07. In whatever folder you've created, just save it as that, because we'll come back to this one later. Okay, we're back. Now, we've saved our file, we've saved our sketch. How do we get back to editing our sketch? Again, multiple ways of doing things. The first way, you select the sketch in your feature tree, and you click this icon here, which says Edit Sketch. That's going to take you back into Edit Sketch mode. You can tell you're in Edit Sketch mode because you can see those two icons in the top right, including the red cross. And in the top left, you can see the Exit Sketch button is depressed. Now that we've saved the sketch, if I make some changes here and I don't like them, and I want to go back to what the original version of the sketch was, if I hit the cross, it's going to discard those changes. All right, so now we're here. Let's work on making this fully defined and talking about what fully defined actually means. That wraps up part 2. You now know how to sketch curves and control your workspace more effectively. If you found this helpful, consider subscribing to catch the rest of the series. Let's keep the momentum going in part 3.